The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, proud pony. I just realized as we were going live, I came in and I had most of my makeup on already, and then we got into such a fun talk about the Oscars and what we didn't like that I totally forgot to finish putting on my makeup. So if you look closely, I have no lips and I have no eyebrows. That's just how you're going to take me today, because that's how I am. And my hair looks funky, but I look like I'm playing Andy Warhol. But that's today. And it's March, and Michelle already wrote in and said, hi, happy March 2025. Yes, can anybody believe that we are already in March? Amazing. So if you don't know me, I'm Shannon Penrod. I am a proud pony that stands for parent of neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son has given me and that we've agreed upon to describe my relationship to his earlier diagnosis. I am so happy to be here. You're watching Autism Live on the Autism Network. Our mission here is to provide information and inspiration to the larger autism community that starts with individuals who are themselves on the autism spectrum. And then we widen that lens to include everyone who loves individuals on the spectrum. I am one of those people. And for people who are looking to be good allies, or as Amy Gravino tells us, good accomplices, we include all of those people in the conversation because we feel that together, si se puede, right? We hold hands. Brian says, good morning, you look great. Well, no lips, I look a little pale, but life goes on. That's how it is sometimes. Hey, before I forget, if you have a chance, especially if you're in the Los Angeles area, go look at maxsold.com, look at auctions that are in, or you can go to my Facebook or Autism Live's Facebook. We have links there. And check out the things that we are selling in our auction. We're getting rid of some stuff as we get ready to move. We are moving the studio again. I know my dear friend Matt Asner wrote to me on Saturday and said, hey, are you guys okay? I see that you have an auction. And I said, yeah, this is all the stuff that we haven't used in a long time, but some of it's good stuff. There's some good furniture, there's some good cameras, there's some good leftover swag that we have from different events. So please check that out. We are looking to get rid of some stuff and to have it rehomed in places where people can use it, better. Like we have cameras that shouldn't just be sitting around here. Maybe you want to go shoot something. So check it out. Parker, you're here with us too. I think this topic struck a chord with a lot of people. Parker says adults get bullied as well in workplaces and places like that. Well, I think, Parker, tell me what you think when we get through these top 10 tips. I think that a lot, if not most, if not all, of these would apply also to adults. But by the way, it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable whenever it is. I like to imagine that for children who bully, and we're going to talk about this, we're going to try to get into the heads of people who are bullies. For children who bully, I like to have a bit of compassion. But if there's an adult who's bullying a child or an adult, it's like my compassion runs a little thin, right? People need to be educated. That not okay, not what you have to do. But good morning, Autism Journey with Elijah. We're thrilled that you're here too. Look at all the fun people we have in the house. I want to say, again, go check out our auction on Max Sold. We're getting rid of some extra studio stuff and some stuff from the office, but Matt said, are you guys okay? Yes, we're just moving. And moving is, a pain in the you-know-what. So we're trying to skinny down and let go of some stuff. I'm in a new Zen phase of my life where I'm like, if I haven't used it in a long time, maybe we don't need it. And we're changing up how we're doing things and how we're going to shoot the show a little bit. So, yeah, we're fine. Yeah, Parker, I agree. Parker says, people forget that bullying does not stop when your child turns 18. And that is the truth. There shouldn't be any bullying. And we'll talk about why that is, but there is nonetheless. So today we're doing the top 10 tips to make your child bully-proof. And I always say, Parker, there's this weird thing that when you have a child stands for somebody who's under the age of 18, but when they are my child, my son is about to turn 22. He's still my child, right? He's not a child anymore, but he is a child of mine. There needs to be another word in the English dictionary that's warm and fuzzy, because I could say my progeny, right? But he's my kid, right? We need another word. If somebody can tell me another word that we can refer to when the I have, because it's not just about birthing, right? It's that they are my child. They're from, I raised this person, right? So how we refer to them, my adult child, okay, so help me if you know another word, Parker. But when I say child here, I mean child that you raised, which could be an adult. It could be an adult child. Okay, I'm going to do, well, first of all, let me stop and say we're live. Obviously, people are already writing in. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you on our screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see all the different places we are, that we're, many different places that we are. Most of you are watching, are listening to us, in podcasts. The lion's share of our audience downloads the free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're everywhere, right? He's showing you iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those different places where you can download a free podcast. It is important to note that there is a cost for it. We're just making sure that you don't have to pay for it. We defray that cost by having advertisers. So when you download the free podcast, you will have advertisements on it. And I hope when those advertisements play, you'll go, woohoo, they paid for me to get this information for free. If you're somebody that really needs to have it ad-free, we have a way for you to do that as well. You can go to glow.fm/autismlive. You pay a small monthly fee, $5. And then you get, every time that we do something on the Autism Network, it's not just Autism Live, it includes Ask Dr. Doreen. Every time we do a new show, it shows up in your inbox and it gets there ad-free. So there you are. Please take a look. We're getting ready. We're in March now, right? And you know what comes after March? It's about to be April. It's Autism A month, whatever the words are for you, whether it's action, awareness, acceptance, allies, accomplices, whatever. There's so many A words, right? Whatever the A words are for you, we've got some amazing shows planned for you in the month of April. And I have to say to you guys, it takes a lot for us to keep going. And one of the ways that you can help us is by letting other people know about this show. And you do that every time you comment, if you want someone to know about the show, when you comment and put their name in, it gives them a link directly back to the show that you're watching. What else? If you like, if you share, if you review, if you subscribe, all of those things help us to keep going. As we start our, is it the 14th or the 15th year? I don't know. I need someone to do the math for me. I want to read Autism Journey with Elijah says, my son was bullied at the park. I'm so sorry. He's such a sweet young man. He does not, no one deserves that, but he does not deserve that. He asked to play tag with the kids at the park, and he had fun, but they made him it, and he got upset, and then after about 20 minutes, he started to get upset. I didn't want to make it worse by having him cry in front of the other kids, meltdown waiting to happen. We had to leave, and I explained to him many things. We took him out to McDonald's to make him feel better, but he was super upset. And of course he was. That's so mean. One of the things that we need to do is educate our friends to teach their children to be kind. Isn't that sad? But it's true. The kids started to laugh at him and call him names. So sad. My heart was broken. We left. And that is very sad. But some of the things that we're going to talk about today are ways that we can help. Most of it is stuff that we do with our kids to make them bully proof. Because somebody said to me recently, I'm so worried about going to school and about there's so much we don't have control over. And the truth is, we started this year by saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? And so the truth is, we can't change other people's kids. We can plant the seed in the parent's mind that they have their kids be nicer to our kids, and we can teach our kids all kinds of things, right? That is within the power of us. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Do I feel very strongly that we also need to make the world change? Yes. But that's a much harder climb, and we don't have as much control. So we start with our kids and help them to be bully proof. So I'll tell you what let's do. Let's run through them, the 10 things. I think there's actually 11 things maybe. And let's run through them really quick, and then we'll go back and talk about them at length because there's a lot to talk about here. Okay, so let's take a look. And my disclaimer for this one is we never let bullying go unreported, especially at school, but pretty much anywhere. And it is important that we don't, a lot of times people will underreact. In this instance, I was specifically referring to school, but the truth of the matter is that we really, in any instance, should not let it go. Like, I think that you were absolutely right to put your energy into Eli and to take care of him and to remove him from that playground. But I also think that if you have the opportunity, if you go back to that park and you see those kids and you find their parents and say, I just want to let you know what happened yesterday. Or there's also the threat of that if you say to kids when they're standing there and they're being mean and you say, where's your mom? I'd like to talk to your mom. Now, that doesn't work for every kid, but for some kid, that puts a cold shiver down their spine. And they realize, I don't think I'm acting in a way that if my mom knew, she would be happy about that, right? But at school especially, if we see bullying, if our child identifies bullying, we need to report that, and we need to use the term handicap harassment when appropriate. Because the law of the land says that's not allowed. And if you feel truly that your child is being picked on and being bullied, and it has anything to do with their diagnosis or diagnoses, you need to report that. That's legally actionable, and it's the only thing that will move the dial for the school. And we need to not allow the schools to underreact. School is going to tell you, we've got it taken care of. And they're going to tell, and when you say, well, can you tell me what you did? They're going to tell you, we cannot because of HIPAA. We are not allowed to identify who the child is or what the repercussions were. You need to stay on them like nobody's business, right? Raina says, my child won't talk to other children. I've seen children hit her and tell her to go away, and it breaks my heart because she doesn't react appropriately when hit, and she doesn't recognize that she is not welcome. Again, horrible. And my heart hurts for you and your beautiful child. We're going to talk about some things that you can do to shore her up, but I still, and you will find sometimes you say something to a parent and the parent is like, well, then your kid deserved it. And then you just have to go, I am not going to change this dynamic. But you leave understanding why the child is as miserable as they are. But I'm so sorry. So sorry. This is all painful, right? But we're going to do our best to see if we can change the dial. Okay, really quickly, let's go through the 10 things. So, number one thing, volunteer at your child's school. But this applies to almost anything. Wherever your child is, volunteer to be there because your presence makes a difference. I'll tell you all why in a second. Number two, teach your child how to make a friend. Sounds easy, isn't. We're going to go into depth about that. Number three, teach your child how to keep a friend. That's critical because we can make friends, but we need to be able to repair relationships as we go. We'll tell you tips on that in a second. Number four, give lots of opportunities to interact with friends. That means lots of play dates. If they're older, it means lots of hangouts, right? We have to give the opportunities. Lots and lots of practice. Number five, make play dates really, really reinforcing for everyone. That means it has to be reinforcing for you, and it has to be reinforcing for the other kids, and it has to be reinforcing for their parents. It's a lot. We're going to give you tips on that. Number six, dun, da, 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 teach your child how to plan a play date. You're not going to be here forever, and the truth is that when you get to the point where you're teaching your child how to plan the play date and why they should be, it's really going to help with all kinds of things, perspective taking about how can I make this good for me and make it good for them. That's part of how you're going to keep the friend. Okay, number seven, teach your child how to ask for help. This is huge. This is critical. This is so important, right? It's going to help prevent them from being bullied. Number 8, teach your child how to react to bullies. They've done research on this. And we're going to get inside the head of the bully and things your child can do that, makes them move on to other people. Number 9, teach your child perspective taking. There's a lot of different reasons why that's going to help. Number 10, teach your child the difference between a friend and a bully. We all think that our kids will just automatically understand this, but I'm going to tell you, as they were teaching my child to this, I figured out that I had a friend who was bullying me, and I didn't realize it until I heard the criteria. We'll share that with you in a second. And I think we have 11. Yeah? No? No? Chris is saying no? Okay. I felt that I had one more, but maybe not. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning and let's dive in and let's see what we can do here. So starting with number 1, don't forget you're going to report any bullying. You will be the last person to underreact. That's sort of, and if somebody accused you of overreacting, okay, all right, but you're not, so don't worry about it. So volunteering at your child's school is number 1 for me, because first of all, you're going to have eyes on the situation. You're going to know more than you knew before, because it can be the best, most communicative staff and teacher in the world, but seeing is believing, right? You're going to see who the kids are that are bullying. You're going to see what the dynamic is. You're going to see how your child is reacting, yada, 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 yada. But also, it's entirely possible that things won't happen when you're there. And if you're there volunteering in the classroom, there's an opportunity, especially when kids are little, there's an opportunity where you'll be put in charge of something. Like maybe you're in charge of handing out the Kool-Aid, and you're a nice person, and you're modeling behavior about how you're nice to everybody, and you're giving everybody their little Kool-Aid, right? And you're being nice to them. It's infinitely harder for that kid to pick on your kid. It's not impossible, and I learned this very, very dearly. I learned this, but it's harder for them. If you're being nice and you're there, it puts another layer over your child where those kids, because you have to understand, I remember it was Dr. Jonathan Tarbox who, when my child was being bullied, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox explained to me that in all of nature, that humans are, this is the thing that really separates us from the animal kingdom, that we are the only people that go through a phase, and the phase is supposed to be from the time you're like 8 to maybe 15, but it isn't just between those years, but we go through a phase where we actually regress for status, because we identify, when kids start to do perspective taking, they start to identify, I'm the lowest person on the totem pole. Or they see that somebody is leaving them out or picking on them. And so those kids, some of them learn, okay, well, the way to have status so that I'm not the lowest person on the totem pole is to look around and see who might be the weakest person and pick on them. And try to garner support to pick on that person, so I am now not the lowest person. It's a very ugly thing. But it's a very, normal, but it's a common thing that happens for kids who feel like they don't have status. It's supposed to end by 15 because you're supposed to be old enough at that point to discern, this doesn't work, this is unkind, this is not actually helping me, this is me regressing. Now, a lot of people don't get there by 15. A lot of people don't get there by, I don't want to say what I want to say. I just edited. Okay. But all that being equal and even, we want to shield our child. So part of how we make them bully proof is that they're not the weakest person standing there. And by having an adult who's kind and wonderful and comes and volunteers, adds a layer of protection. But it also helps you to see, okay, what's going on. I'm gonna tell you a story about There was a little kid that was in a lot of Jem's classes. I don't remember which grades, but he was in a lot of them because the kids sort of rotate, right? But he was in a lot of his classes. And I knew his mom. And I knew his mom really well, and we got invited to parties. We lived kind of in this same neighborhood, right? And I really, really liked her. I didn't know what the backstory was, but I liked the mom and I liked the kid. He was a really cute, sweet kid. And then he turned into a bully, and he was bullying my child, and it was dicey because I was friends with the mom, and she was a little bit defensive about things, and I didn't really understand what was happening. But I was there volunteering at school, and I began to see that part of the problem was that child was being bullied by the teacher. That's what was happening. And, as much as I wanted to be mad at him because I was like, this little puke is bullying my child, and he was pulling other kids in to do it, but I saw that he was literally being bullied by the teacher. I intervened on a field trip and said, that's not appropriate. I pulled the teacher aside. I didn't do it in front of the whole class, but I pulled the teacher aside and I said, you're not being fair. That's inappropriate. And I am, going to report that if you do not stop immediately. And she was ticked beyond all possible belief, but the kiddo saw that I advocated for him, and his bullying of my child stopped immediately. I also then went to the mother and said, here is what I saw. If I were you, I would file a complaint and I will sign it. This is not okay. But mom was a little bit mad at me from me saying, this is the behavior. But that kiddo knew that I was an ally from there on. And that happened because I volunteered, right? So you will learn all kinds of things in the process of being a volunteer. Plus, you'll find that everything gets better. Your child will be thrilled to have you in the classroom. It's an investment in the future, because when you're there and you're interacting with those kids, and if you're kind to them, kids don't forget that. And when you're back next year, they don't forget that, and it cements it in more. So volunteer. I told the story the other day about the fact that eventually I started directing the Women in History project at my son's school because that's what my background is. I could do that in my sleep, right? That's not a huge ask of me. Great fun for me to go in. And the faculty was all like, but I started doing it when my son was in second grade, and you only do it with the fourth graders. And they were like, I don't understand why you're doing it and it doesn't involve your son's class. I said, I'm volunteering for the school and I'm having a good time. I don't understand. Then eventually it was my son's class. That was probably the hardest year to do it because it was my son's class and he's unused to me in that role as a director. But we did it. It was fine. And then then they said, oh, well, you're not going to do it anymore, right? And I said, what are you talking about? Of course I'm going to do it. I'm having fun. And I did that for like 6 more years after he was in 4th grade, until I just couldn't do it anymore and we moved away. But that investment in time in all of those kids paid off. Not only was it fun for me, but those kids knew me and they knew I was his mom. And so my first day of junior high, when I dropped Jem off, one of the kids who'd been the year before him, who, had just been wonderful, just wonderful little actor to work with. And my son was walking onto campus and here goes, the young man's name was Adolphus. And he was so amazing. And Adolphus was walking by and he saw Jem and he was like, Mrs. P! That's what they all call me. He's like, Jem's here this year. That's great. Don't worry. We got him. And they made sure that he was okay. So volunteer at your child's school. It puts a layer of protection on your child that is absolutely amazing. Parker says, another one I have to mention, especially with teenagers, adults, learn social media etiquette. Yes, that's very, very important. And he says, I had to learn through experience. For my number one, it would work that way in secondary education, middle, high school. Yeah, it's harder to volunteer at your child's school in middle school and high school. But when we talk about how to make a friend, we're going to talk about your child has to be involved in a club, and we'll talk about how you can volunteer with a club, and then you have a presence on the campus. Okay, because you're right, Parker. It's really important in middle and high school because A lot of people volunteer for the younger grades, so there's a lot of parents standing around. But in middle school and high school, the herd thins, which means that you're that much more noticeable as a parent, and the kids see, the parent is here. This is not going to be easy pickings. It's terrible. It's terrible to have to talk that way, but it's true. Let's move on to number 2. So we're going to teach your child how to make a friend. And this is critical. And for every child, every teen, every adult, this is going to be a little bit different. But one of the ways that we teach how to make a friend is by first identifying things that you have in common, right? I don't know if it was with you guys or somebody else that I told the story the other day about watching Liz Loggeson, Dr. Liz Loggeson from the Peers program, that she, I encourage you, you should really look at the Peers. It's PEERS program at UCLA. They do this training with you and your kiddo, and they have it with different age groups. So I don't think any of you have a child who's too young to do this. I have no idea what the cost is, but I know they started doing it online, and they have different periods of time when you can sign up. But it's so there's a weekly meeting, and the kids are all together in one Zoom room, right? And the parents are all together in another Zoom room. They're teaching your kids how to do something, and for the parents, they're telling you what they're teaching your child and how to support it. So you don't have to wonder. They give the kids an assignment, and like maybe the assignment is, let's say it's teenagers, that they need to send a text to somebody else in the group. We start out in the group first, but then it goes to other kids. They need to send a text to somebody in the group saying, hey, do you want to hang out? And then as a parent, okay, the assignment was to text a friend, and then you say, can I, see what you texted and see if they went wrong anywhere, right? Or how it went and when the hangout is. So they really gear it towards what are appropriate social things for whatever the age of the kiddos is. It's really a brilliant program. I sat in on just one of the trainings that Dr. Loggeson was doing, and she was talking about how your clothes are a billboard, and that how you wear your clothes sends a message to other people that says, hit or miss, do we agree? And so she was talking specifically about teenagers, and a lot of schools have a school uniform. And my son's high school had a school uniform. But when he was a freshman and about to start school, and it was a school where we had never gone to school with any of these kids before, and I was worried, right? But Dr. Loggeson had said that, make your child's billboard something that attracts, like being a flower, attract the bees, right? You want to attract like-minded people. This is how a friendship starts. We agree on something. So we spent all summer long, because we knew that the first 2 days before school, they were going on a 2-day, not overnight, but they would come back every evening, where the kids would all go together to, it was a college prep high school, so they were going to college campuses and touring them as a class and they had bonding activities for them to get to know each other. Great. But I thought, oh, what if he's like on the bus by himself and nobody wants to sit by him? We were all worried, right? But Dr. Loggeson had taught me, put a t-shirt on him that sends a message. So we spent all summer thinking, okay, my son really likes video games. And we were like, what video game do you like that maybe everybody doesn't know about? And what's one of the characters that if you didn't know, like if you're just walking through a mall and if you didn't know this game or this character, you'd see the t-shirt and it would mean absolutely nothing to you. But if you did play that game that you love so much and you recognize that character, you'd be like, dude, and probably a t-shirt that isn't like, I had to find a special website, Redbubble, and find that t-shirt and, weeks ahead of time to get it shipped. But we found 2 of those t-shirts I didn't know who the characters were, right? First day, he wears the t-shirt. He gets on the bus. I don't see him all day. I just about need to be sedated. But I pick him up at the pickup time. He gets off the bus and he comes to sit in the car. And I'm like, so what was your day like? Which college did you go to? And he's texting away furiously. And I'm like, who are you texting? What is going on here? And he goes, oh, we started a chat group. I can't think what the name of the thing is, the chat group. But it's a closed group where it was like 17 people. And I said, 17 people? You were all in a chat together? Who are these people? And he's like, they're my friends from my new school. And he said I got on the bus and somebody said, oh my gosh, you play that game? And then somebody else said, I play that game. And 17 of them got together, had lunch together, right? And this was the beginning of how to make friends. There's a million ways to make friends. But if you have the ability, put your child in the peers program so that they have, several different ways to make friends. That's just one example. But can I tell you the life-changing amount of that he had 17 people on day one of his freshman year that they were all going to sit together. They were a force. Nobody picked on them. They're 17 people deep. You don't pick on 17 people. He was bully-proof. Studies show that if the more people there are in the group, the less likely that those kids will be bullied. Sometimes we settle for one kid, right? And that there's nothing wrong with that, except sometimes that kid moves, or sometimes that kid is sick, and then your child is the lone wildebeest, right? Which we don't want. Bullies hone in on that. Nobody in high school bullied those 17 boys. And if somebody wasn't there that day, there were 16 of them, right? 5 people are out, they were still a force. A lot of them are still really close and text each other. They've all gone off to colleges in different places. But I tell you, these young men are going to be the best men at the other weddings. It's an amazing thing. A T-shirt started them off to success. So, lots of things to learn in the peers program. But whatever program your child is in, if you're doing ABA, boy, we worked on this in ABA about how to make a friend. What are the words? What are the gestures? What are the body movements? What are the facial expressions that we use to make a friend? Don't assume that your child will know how to do this. Truth is, I don't think I knew how to do this, but sometimes it would just happen, right? But I ended up being friends with people who did more of the work than I did because I didn't really know how to make a friend. Nobody taught this to me. But I got to learn through watching my child. So critical that we teach them how to make a friend. We'll talk more about, this is stuff that they can do, but they also have to recognize things that are coming the other way, and that comes in the perspective taking. But this is critical. Now, number 3 is the flip side of it, because we all know friendships aren't easy. They're things that it's like a plant that has to be watered, and you gotta consider if things go wrong and how to keep a friend. And part of keeping a friend is knowing, what upsets them and changing strategies and noticing, right? So that's a longer lesson that you're going to teach very individually. But for instance, we're going to talk about play dates in a second, but it's because this all goes together. But you have the play date. We always had goals during the play dates of what we were going to work on. Like I would have a goal. Sometimes the ABA technician who was going to be there, I used to call them therapists. I don't like calling them BTs because it sounds like, I don't know, a car mechanic. They're not. They're wonderful people who are playing with your kids, right? But so sometimes they would have a specific goal that they were working on, but we would always agree on giving a couple of goals to my son for during the play date. One of the things that we want you to be working on today is sharing. So we're going to give you tons of opportunity to make sure that you share. And I would always make sure that there was a reward for whatever the thing that we were doing. So every time I see you share, I'm going to give you a point. And the more points you get, then it's going to translate into something, right? You get to pick the movie tonight, or you get to pick whatever. We have specific things that we work on that are important for keeping the friendship. I will tell you that later we're going to talk about our kids have to identify the difference between a friend and a bully. But it's also important for our kids to know for themselves what are the qualities of a good friend. A good friend listens to their friend, and they share and they take turns, right? We also worked on teaching our child levels of friendship. That there are some friends that you have that are acquaintances, right? And you don't have to agree on everything. And you don't have to change them, and they don't have to change you, and you don't have to work overtime to like be a better friend with them because they're an acquaintance, right? Then there are friends that you're good friends with, right? That you work a little bit harder for. And then there's your besties. And those are the people you trust with, you know, the stuff that's really important to you that you would not necessarily trust with the acquaintance. And then the bullies are outside of all that. But understanding that, you know, I work harder for those people who are closer to keep that friendship than I do for an acquaintance will save your child a bunch of heartache, right? Because we've all been there, I think, for ourselves, but we certainly have watched our kids where our kids are working overtime trying to get somebody's attention. Like poor little Eli, who was trying to play with those kids who were playing whatever the game was, and they weren't giving anything back, right? So they're not good friends. But, you know, to teach Eli that when you have a good friend, then we try a little bit harder. He was trying hard for somebody that it was not worth it, right? I want to see, Parker says age-appropriate interests are a must. Absolutely. Paw Patrol clothes are not appropriate. Well, I don't know that I completely agree with that, Parker, because if you're an adult and what you're into is Paw Patrol, believe me, there are other adults who are into Paw Patrol. And at a certain point, it doesn't matter anymore. At a certain age, what you're into is what you're into. I think from 8 to maybe 16, it's a little bit more appropriate because we don't know yet how flexible this person is with the things that they love. So if somebody loves Paw Patrol at 8, we do want to stretch them a little bit and have them like other things that are more age appropriate. And part of that is because of the bullying factor. You're absolutely right. But also part of it is getting them more flexible. Now, by the time you're 18 years old, you know, what you like is what you like. And we need to stop judging it. Does it make you someone who might be bullied? Potentially. But if you have people around you, if somebody bullies you because you have a Paw Patrol t-shirt on, the people around you will surround you with that and tell them that they're being a horrible person. I totally hear what you're saying about that it makes you more likely to be bullied, but I think you should be allowed to like what you want to like. Claudia asked, anyone recommend a video game to play for someone with slow reaction time, not verbal, not reading? You know, we have a whole list of video games. I got to be honest with you that there's a whole thing about mirror neurons. Have you guys heard about this? That when you're a neurotypical person, hate that term, and let's say we're watching the Olympics. If we were hooked up to a brain scan, and there are these places in our brain that are called mirror neurons, and I'm watching somebody ice skate in the Olympics. The part of the brain where if I were ice skating myself, will light up because I am watching them do that. I'm not actually doing the movement, but the mirror neurons light up. Except for kids with autism, not so much. Either not at all or not very much. Not the same amount. It's one of the differences. So I really like all the Wii Fit stuff because it encourages them. There's an avatar, and there's so many things like the Just Dance stuff and the Wii Fit stuff. I like the little balance board, and you can get them now used. People sell them in every garage sale, right? But it gives them immediate feedback. Like there's one where they have to learn how to meditate, and they sit on the board and their avatar is sitting there facing them. And if they move a little bit, it shows that they moved a little bit, right? So I think doing games where they're mirroring, the only thing is like on the Just Dance, there's a way that you can do it competitive or less competitive. Don't make it competitive because we want them to win, right? But the more that they connect with, oh, I do this and the thing on the screen does that, it's going to help their reaction time a lot. And it's also going to light up those mirror neurons. I kind of love it. Parker said gaming forums are your best bet for that. The whole thing with the Wii Fit, they don't have to be verbal and they don't have to be reading. Parker says social media etiquette, especially in teens and beyond. I mean, cyberbullying is a real serious issue in 2025. It really is. It's really important that we monitor what our teens, and if you give your child a phone, and I love having your child have a phone, right? And I gave my child a phone probably earlier than most people think is advisable. But then I monitored. And that still wasn't enough sometimes, but you got to monitor it like your heart depends on it. Autism Journey with Elijah replied to Parker, our Eli got bullied on social media, almost took our page down, but I didn't want to show him to give up. We need to stand our ground and show him to stand up and believe in yourself and be proud of who you are. He is doing better now because we set that foundation and strength in what he believes. He is doing well now that he understands. That's amazing. Because you know that there are 20-year-olds who don't understand that. So it's amazing that he's already getting that. Okay, so we're going to teach our child how to get a friend, and we're going to teach them how to keep a friend. We're really running late. Let's go to 4. We're going to give lots of opportunities to interact with play dates or hangouts or whatever. I am hoping very soon, maybe even Wednesday, we're going to welcome to the show Bryce Myler. Bryce Myler was a godsend to me. She is an amazing parent who is an autism expert, but her son had gone through the CARD program ahead of me. So as my son was starting, her son was like 16, 17 years old and graduating from high school and getting ready to go to college. And she was a wealth of information for me. So on the day that my son was graduating from his CARD program, I was so nervous. I was like, what? I don't know what to do now. And Bryce said to me, oh, here's what you're going to do. You are going to turn your house into the most fun house on the block. You are going to identify who are the kids that have either big families or they're an only child where the parent is going to be grateful to have them have a play date that they don't have to arrange. And you are going to make your house the most fun place, and you're going to rotate and invite kids. You are constantly going to be having play dates at your house. And I did. As much as I could stomach it, I did. By the way, when he was at CARD, they were constantly asking for us to have play dates, and that was harder for me because he wasn't good at it yet. And it was hard for me to watch him not be good at it. But they helped him, and he got better at it, and then it was much easier. So I'm just telling you, if your gut is like, oh, I don't want to do it, I was there too, but they need it. They need opportunities with lots of different types of kids. We also had the thing where we would have one kid over, and then we would have 2 kids over, and then we would have 3 kids over, and then we built it up till 5. It's really hard because sometimes the group of kids will get fatutzed with something your child is doing, and there's a pack of them now. It's really, 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 really hard. But it's worthwhile. It makes it, and the more you do it with the more types of kids, the better your child gets at it. So give them lots and lots of opportunities, but have support and know what you're working on, because they can't work on everything at the same time. Having 2, 3 at the max things, like for instance, what I was saying before, today we're working on sharing. I just want you to share with your child. It may be working on using appropriate language if you see that your child struggles with that. So you decide, and I hope you have help and support to make sure that it's a good, productive play date. Let's go on to number 5. Make play dates really worthwhile for everyone. So here was the other part of the advice that Bryce gave me. She was like, you make your house the most fun. You make it so that everybody has such a good time that even if your child isn't getting it perfect, they're motivated to come back to your house. So we always had treats galore. My husband would come home from work and he would take everybody's order. He would go to 4 different fast food restaurants to pick what everybody wanted for dinner. I mean, that's where we spent our money. We didn't go on vacation for a couple of years because we were spending money making play dates the most fun thing on the planet. It's got to be worthwhile for those kiddos. It has to be worthwhile for you. It's got to be worthwhile for the parent who's dropping and picking up their child, right? So at the door, when the parent picks up the kiddo, it's a moment, right? And there were some kids that weren't always perfect in the play date, but that's great, right? Because my child needed to know how to negotiate with some, difficulties, right? So as the kids got older, I would always do a thing where I would let them make the biggest mess. I would let them have a popcorn fight, right? But they all knew that we were going to take 10 minutes at the end and we were going to do a speed clean, that we would also make fun and ridiculous. I would put music on. It would be like, how fast can we clean up? And even run the vacuum cleaner and pick up the popcorn. Because otherwise, they respect you less. So take the last 10 minutes and let them clean up. But even if something hadn't gone well during the play date, when the parent showed up and said, how did it go? Remember, those parents are nervous too. Was my kid okay? Unless it was something huge, I would say they were great. We loved having them come. And you build that trust with the kiddo that you're not going to tell on every little thing. Now, if there was something big, and I can remember one time when there was something big, and I had to talk to the parent because it was not okay. Right? So make it worthwhile for everybody. And then the parent, if the parent is picking up and you say they were wonderful, the parent goes, I love them coming to your house. They can come back to your house whenever, because they get in the car and they go, we had such a good time, and we did this and we did that. And the parent's like, I know that you're safe and having a good time at that house. When my son was in junior high, we made a regular thing where a group of kids came over to the house. I cooked, I ordered food, I had my husband go get, but every Friday, as long as everybody's grades were up and everybody in the group and all the parents knew their grades had to be good or they couldn't come, right? And they got to play video games, and they would do a live stream and other kids would watch and listen. It was dicey. You know what I'm saying? I had to make sure everything went okay on the live stream, but kids would try to friend my son because they wanted to come to the house. That's when you know you're doing the play date thing right? When kids want to come to play with your child because the play date is so amazing, they're going to overlook your child is learning things. They're going to get frustrated with your child, just like your child's going to get frustrated with them. That's friendship early on. But they're going to be willing to overlook those things because it's so worthwhile for them. Gotta make it fun. Play dates for teens. Well, they don't call it play dates anymore when they're teens, right? They call it hangouts. It's very productive. I remember there was one Friday that the group of 5 boys came over. They did their games and everything, but then they were all going to a dance afterwards. And I was going to drop them off at the dance, but I was volunteering at the dance, so I was there, and I got to see what happened. And one of the boys went off and abandoned the other, my son and the other 3 boys, and, did his own, and acted like he didn't even know them, which was very interesting, right? But the other boys, 4 of them total, my son and the other 3, they clung together and had a great time at the dance because they weren't there by themselves. And they knew that they had their core group. I had a discussion with somebody the other day because they went to a party by themselves. And I was like, what? You went to a party? Who does that? I never in my life ever went to a party by myself. I always went with at least one other person. Now, sometimes that person bails on you, right? But that's such bravery to walk into a place by yourself. I don't think anybody loves that. So it does shore up for teens, Parker, to help them. It can be, it's a floor of opportunity for other things so that you feel more comfortable with other people. I think it's critical. I think it's really, really important. Okay, number 6, teach your child how to plan for a play date. This is really, really important, and you can start this when they're 4. Okay, we're going to have somebody, what do we want to play? What are the toys that we want to put out that we want to play with? What do we want to have for our snacks, right? You're helping them to build this idea of that we're having an activity and we're going to do something. This is going to help with dating. This is going to help anytime that they have a friend over. Have we all had the experience? Who was telling the story recently? It was Nicole Kidman talking about how Jimmy Fallon had invited her over to his apartment. And she thought it was a date and that they were going to hook up. And she got there and Jimmy Fallon was busy, like, I don't know, playing a video game or whatever. And she was like, okay, like, there's not a meal, there's not a thing, this guy is not into me. And she left. And she told this story and Jimmy Fallon was like, I didn't know, right? But he clearly did not plan the play date right. And so we want to help our children to not do that. It's an event. We're going to do something. We're going to eat something. We're going to drink something. There might be 3 things that we're going to do. Or we might have a choice. They can make a board and go, when the friend gets here, do we want to go to the park? Do we want to play this video game? Or do we want to play this board game, right? That there are choices that they can make. But have them be involved in making the play date. That's really the key. Not planning the whole thing for them. Have them be involved in that. Okay, on to number 7. Teach your child how to ask for help. Okay, so now we're really getting into the nitty-gritty about when your child is someplace and maybe they don't have their whole group with them, or you're not there, or whatever the thing is, and somebody is mistreating them. Now, there's a whole drop-down menu of a way that a child can ask for help. One of the things that we teach our children is that when somebody is doing something that is hurting them, that first line of defense is to say to the person, you're hurting me. And if they do not immediately stop doing what they're doing, to pitch up their voice and say it louder and say, ow, you're hurting me. So that the teacher or the person who's on yard duty or the other kids hear it, right? And then the third thing is to say, help, this person is hurting me. This friend, this kid, this whatever is hurting me. Because teachers and first responders and good people orient to this, but also the bully goes, uh-oh, I'm about to be in trouble, right? So we teach this to our kids, that it's okay, when somebody is doing something, that's not okay, and it's okay to say, you're hurting me. It's okay to say, stop, you're hurting me. It's okay to say, help me, you're hurting me. There's a whole bunch of psychology about this. There's the whole Kitty Genovese study that they did about how could someone be murdered in front of a bunch of people and nobody did anything. And I know I was taught in college, based on the Kitty Genovese story, that if you're ever in a circumstance and you need help, that you can scream all you want, but people don't do anything. But if you turn to someone and say, you help me, this person is hurting me, you are much more likely to get help. That if you identify people and say help. So now we teach this to our children. We teach them to look for, like when you're out and about, there's a whole set of lessons and skills about teaching about people in the community. You want to make sure that your child knows, first of all, who first responders are. And I've always said, take them to call first, go to the fire department, go to the police department, have them take the tour. They will let them sit in the front of the police car. They will let them sit in the back of the police car. And it does not feel good to sit in the back of a police car. It's not a friendly environment. I have pictures. They put the fireman coat on my son and let him, with the hat on, sit at the steering wheel in the fire truck. He remembers it to this day. So we teach them to understand these are the people that we ask for help. But then we got to go to the next layer, right? When you're out in the grocery store, I remember I had to go to every grocery store that we went to, and I had to take a picture of one of the employees of what they wore. So, because I didn't really pay attention before, but at Trader Joe's, they were all wearing khakis and they had Hawaiian shirts on. And so we had a picture of Trader Joe's, and then at Target, they wear khakis or black pants and they have the red shirts on. Okay. I don't know at Walmart, I think they have the vests, right? We had pictures of what everybody wore at the different stores, because these are people that you can ask for help, right? But then The next phase was that we taught our son to look, and if you see a mom with a small kid, that's the next line of defense, because usually if they have a small kid, they're a compassionate person and they want to help somebody asking for help. So you teach all of these things to your child, and obviously at the school you teach them, here's the teacher, here's the person you ask for help, here's the guidance counselor, here's who you ask for help, here's the assistant principal, they're a person that helps. We need to identify those things. It's not enough to just assume, because a lot of times kids see authority and they think this is the person I'm going to be in trouble with. You have to teach them these are people who can help you. I love Eli makes his presence known everywhere he goes. He's a loudspeaker, but if someone crosses that line, he knows to scream loud and proud. Yes, absolutely. But I'll tell you, teaching that thing about, saying, stop, you're hurting me, that's a very, very big thing I'm going to get to in just a minute, because sometimes it doesn't occur to us to teach that to our children. Really, really helpful. Let's go on to number 8. Teach your child how to react to bullies. So they did a bunch of studies on this, and they found that because bullies are looking for status, they're looking to show everybody else, see, I razzed that person, I'm not the lowest person on the totem pole, that when we teach, this is going to feel weird, I'm just going to warn you, but when we teach our kids to go, so if somebody walks up and goes, you're weird, and our kid goes, so, the bully has nowhere to go. And they've done a lot of studies on this. And you will get this kind of training in the peers program, so I do really recommend that you do that. But having your child not ignoring isn't enough, because they'll keep on, right? But turning and having somebody say, so what? Or, okay. Just nothing burger, whatever the response is. I really had a hard time with this, you guys. I really, really did. But Jem was in one class where the teacher was really bent on keeping the classroom clean because there were so many kids in the classroom. And the other kids, there was just a group of them that decided that, this will be funny. That they took, and I think it was like one of them crumpled up some paper and put it underneath Jem's desk. So it got to be the end of class, and the teacher was like, well, everybody else's desk is clean, but, Jem, your thing isn't clean. And so Jem looked, and there's paper under his desk, and now he's like, having a reaction, like, I know that's what's not so. So he's picking up the paper and throwing it away, and now everybody goes, this is kind of fun. So then the next day, there's 4 crumpled up pieces of paper underneath his desk. What's Jem going to do now? And Jem was like, and having a reaction to it. So they got their payoff, right? So the next day there was 12 pieces of paper underneath the desk. And Jem went, look, there's 12 pieces. Okay, I'll be happy to pick up everybody's paper. And he picked them up, and he had no reaction. And so then they didn't throw the paper underneath his desk anymore because he didn't have a reaction. I don't love this, but it works. And the studies show that it works, so I offer it to you. Parker says, some people teach stranger danger so well that everyone is a stranger, even people that are workers, cast members, etc. Yeah, we got to teach that levels of friendship that I was talking about. And who taught me this was Rosie O'Donnell, because I was watching her show, and she had done this whole thing where she had taught her oldest son, stranger danger, don't talk to strangers. And then every day she would walk him in the building, and she was in a building that had a doorman, and she would say hi to the doorman. And her child would freeze up, and she's like, why aren't you saying hi to the doorman? And then she realized he's a stranger. So we do have to teach that levels of friendship and levels of strangers and what's appropriate at each level, that we can say hi to these people, but we don't get into a car with these people, right? It's much more nuanced than don't talk to strangers. So you're absolutely right, Parker. Autism Journey with Elijah says, we were at the museum yesterday, and he kept asking, you work here, excuse me, sir, or excuse me, ma'am. Polite, but had no clue. It was a new place, and we'd never been there before, and he didn't know. But I love that. One of the other things that we were taught is name tags. that name tags could mean that the person works here. And so anytime we would go someplace, we would say, do you see a name tag on that person? And he was learning how to read, so he would learn people's name tags. Do you know that for years, whenever we would go someplace, there's the greeter at Walmart, we'd go in and he learned that he can say, hi, Dolores, and that she would react because he knew her name. I remember we were in line at Disneyland, and there was a woman who was working there, and she had the name tag, and they're fun name tags at Disneyland. And he said, well, hi, Miriam. And that Miriam was like, what a sweet young man you are. And Disney, I don't know if you know this, but the Disney workers always have things in their pockets, like pins and other things. She had a little glass slipper, and she said, you're such a good boy. And she reached in and gave him a glass slipper. And of course, he then realized, oh, you say somebody's name, and it's powerful. So then everywhere he read the name tag, knew their name, and would say it. It was amazing. I don't think he does that anymore. But a year ago, I used to be the same, walked away quietly. Now Eli listens intently to his surroundings. He heard someone say something about him, and Eli turned around and said, what is your problem? Then walked away. I love Eli. He's amazing. Okay, number 9. Teach your child perspective taking. So it is important, and we start with the play dates we start with anything and say, what is dad like? What is dad like? Dad likes football. What is mom like? Mom likes gardening, right? So that they start to realize different people like different things. And then you start teaching them about getting a gift. So Mother's Day is coming up, and you have somebody take them shopping and say, so what would be a good gift for mom? What does mom like? And have them think that through. Because then that transfers to friendships, right? But it also helps to understand bullies. What is it that the bully wants right now? The bully wants me to react. I'm not going to give that to them. But bullies are also people, and recognizing that sometimes your child will befriend a bully and then they're not a bully anymore, right? But teaching perspective taking is a lifelong skill that we're all still working on. But the more your child has this, the better they're going to do in life. So teach your child perspective taking. There's all kinds of lessons. Skills is filled with that, but there's other stuff. I'm sure if you put in perspective taking like on Pinterest, I've never done that, but I'll bet they have stuff. Okay. On to number 10, because this one is critical to me. Teach your child the difference between a friend and a bully. So I remember when my son was in 2nd grade, and they would be out on the playground during recess. And there was a little boy that had been in 1st grade with him too, and I guess I can use his name because, no, I won't use the last name. But the little boy's name, I don't know. I don't want that to blow back on me. I'm going to come up with a different name. George was not his name. So George was somebody that my son would sometimes play with. And George was being raised by his grandmother, and I would always have such a good time talking with her at pickup because I was older, she's older. We had something in common, which makes a friend, right? But George would often be inappropriate with my son. And one of the things that he was doing during recess is that my son had a pull-up hood in his jacket. It was winter. Even in California, it gets cold. And there were little strings. I didn't know enough yet to cut those. Cut the strings on your child's hood. Because George would take the strings, pull them, and try to choke my son. Now, this is not appropriate on any planet for any kiddo. But it was happening on a regular basis. Now, my son had a one-on-one aide, so it would never get far, and she was watching it, documenting it, telling it to the school. They were meeting with George. They were meeting with George's grandmother. They were asking him, why are you doing it? And his answer was, because he's my friend. Now, look, it's just not okay, right? Now, my son, I would say to him, what's happening when George tries to strangle you? And he said, I don't like it. And I said, but what are you doing? And he said, well, I don't do anything because he's my friend. And the aide was the one who was intervening. And so the entire team worked with my son to say to him, okay, step one, you have to say, stop, you're hurting me. And if he does it louder, stop, really loud so that the aide, because what if the aide is distracted for a minute? What's my child going to be choked? No, right? So they're working on this, and I cut the cords so that he couldn't do this, but then he took his hands and he was trying to choke my son. Now, we can talk about where was this child learning this behavior, but when it's your child that is on the end of that behavior, you got to advocate for your kiddo first and hope that somebody is looking at what else is going on for this kiddo, right? And listen, I believe from things that the grandmother told me that the reason why the grandmother was raising him was because he was in a situation he should not have been in. And I feel compassionately about that. But we're not going to let my child be choked because this kiddo was in a bad circumstance, right? That kiddo has to be, that has to be dealt with, but my child has to be safe first and foremost, right? So, but I remember the day that they taught my son, they said, listen, here's how you tell a friend from somebody who's not a friend. If they are hurting you and you say to them, stop that, that is hurting me, and they keep doing it, they are not a friend. And I remember hearing that and going, oh, I didn't know that. Because in that moment in time, I had a friend who was every day doing something that was hurting me. And I had said, can you please not do that? And she continued to do that. It was literally hurting me at work. Deliberately, and I kept saying, could you please not do that? But she kept doing it, and I kept going, but she's my friend, just like my child. Well, my child was heartsick. He said, George is my friend. And they had to do cartoons and stick figures and show him, no, in fact, people might say you're your friend, and you might like them, and you might enjoy playing all the other things, but if they hurt you, and you say stop, and they don't hurt, not your friend. Huge moment for him. And he had feelings about it. And, we started saying, you can't play with George anymore on the playground. And he cried and said, I will miss him. And that's a part of it, right? And we would say, yes, because you miss this and this and this with George. But let's remember, George is okay with hurting you, and that's not okay. And he made friends with other kids, and he went on. But we did not deny him those feelings. I was going through the same thing as I said, I'm not going to be friends with this person anymore because they aren't my friend. It's hard emotionally, and we can't leave that part out of it. But it's critical that we teach this to our kiddos so that they realize this is not somebody I invest in, right? I'm not going to try to change that person, but I don't invest in them anymore. I get to have my feelings of sadness and mourn the friendship that I wanted that's not possible. Hard. Okay, Parker says adults are the same way, but not physically. I had customers belittle me, saying I shouldn't work in customer service. I said nothing, but my former boss is like, that isn't happening, and I went Full Metal Jacket on them. Well, I gotta say, one of the things that watching them teach that to my son, because my son, we went through the phase with George where they talked to George and somebody said, if you continue to try to choke him, you're not being a good friend and you're not going to get to play with him anymore. I don't know, but that didn't work. And he continued to do it. And I do think that there is a phase when we try to, if we try to communicate to someone and say, that's not polite, stop doing that, that hurts my feelings, right? And they continue to do it. It's not a physical thing, because my friend was not physically hurting me, but they were actively doing things to hurt my livelihood. Very specifically, like out in the open, right? And when I said, I wish you would stop doing that, that's hurting me, they continued to do it, right? Then at that point, the talking is over. And the truth is, you're not really, this is where the thing we were talking about before, the serenity prayer, you can't change somebody's mind. If somebody is going to stand there, Parker, and say that you shouldn't be working there, I don't know what their problem is, but they have a problem, right? And they're making it your problem, and of course it hurts, right? And your boss says, this isn't supposed to happen, but yelling at the person, threatening them, whatever Full Metal Jacket is to you, my question is, did it help? And I don't think so. I think that not giving them any more of your energy is the best thing that you can do. And it's tough when you're in a work service situation where you're having to wait on that person and if they're being caustic to you, but I hope your boss is on your side. I remember I was waitressing one place and, I had people who were not being appropriate. And I remember the chef coming out and saying to them, you have 30 seconds to get this together. And then, I don't care, your food is almost up. You're going to be out. And then the one person said something else, and he escorted them out. And they were like, you're really not going to take our business? And he said, no. He had my back. That's what bosses are supposed to be there for. And if someone isn't behaving appropriately, do they have to be serviced? And maybe they do, but maybe your boss can help you to figure out how you aren't in the position to be continued to be, oh, the former boss went Full Metal Jacket. Not you, I misunderstood. I just focused on the next customer. That, high five. That's exactly, because sometimes that's when you need the advocate, somebody else to be like, no, you don't get to treat that person that way. And by the way, that's part of the bullying thing too. When we stand by and allow someone to be bullied in front of us, we become a part of it, right? It's really critical to teach your child a safe way to stick up for somebody. I know people personally whose kids have stuck up for somebody else, and then they become the one who is injured. If you've seen Nickel Boy, that features largely in that movie. It's very important for our kids that don't understand nuances of safe ways to do that. What we told our son was, if you see somebody being bullied, you run away from it towards getting help, because that actually does help the circumstance. You don't just run away from it, but it doesn't put them in charge of it. Because our kids are, they'll jump in with both feet. Okay, Autism Journey with Elijah says, the worst is telling them your feelings, then they laugh at you in your face. That happened to us in a grocery store where we left the store and went someplace else. People are ruthless. Yes. Yes, that's very true. But I'm also hoping to invite, I invited her, we just have to find a time when she can be on, my dear friend from college, Kelly Walton. And I remember the day that I was in a grocery store and there was a mom with her two kids, and the kids were like teenagers, and they weren't as overt as what you're talking about, but they were mean to me and my child, and they were very frustrated with everything we did, and they made faces, and they were whispering and said a couple of things about how, we were taking too much time, and they were talking about his behavior, whatever. And I felt lower than a bug when we left. I don't know that at that point my son, I don't know how much of that he realized was at us, right? But I remember calling Kelly, and Kelly had a much older son on the spectrum than Jem was at the time, and she said to me, you know what? People don't understand, and that makes them ignorant. And she said, you have to remember that your child is amazing, and that you're amazing, and that you're on an amazing journey together. And she said, whenever that happens, she goes, the first thing that I do is I take a deep breath, and I put my shoulders back, and I walk proudly through that store with my child, knowing that there are people who do not understand the journey that we're on, but it doesn't make it any the less amazing. And I will tell you that there have been a couple of times in life when I've had to do exactly that. Take a deep breath and put my shoulders back and walk proud. And there is something about that. You know, they've done all that research about how there's 3 stances that surgeons and lawyers do before they're going to do something big, that there are poses that lead to better performance, that there's like, you know, the executive where you just sit like this, but it opens up your chest, right? And then there's the Superman pose where you have your arms up. Again, it opens up your chest. And I can't remember what the third one is, but I know if I have to speak in front of like 800 people, this one is the Superman one where you stand like this. I think that's what the third one is. I don't like to have my arms over my head. But there's this and this and this, and that when you do that, it changes your state immediately, and it changes your confidence level. And if you can do it for 2 minutes, it's kind of the same thing. When you put your shoulders back and you go, I'm going to walk proudly, it sends a message to people like, do not F with me. And your child is an extension of you. So again, ignoring, not quite enough, because then they're just going to keep on because they're trying to get you to break. But if you change your stance and look at them and, you said to them that they were, whatever, and then they went further, you just like make them feel insignificant. Like just say to them, you are so sad. You are so pathetic, right? And then you walk by. We don't let them. We're Teflon, right? And we teach our kids that, yes, people are ruthless. You're absolutely right. But we are Teflon. It's terrible. We shouldn't have to walk through a store and have to defend ourselves and our kids because our kids are different. But if you turn it around and go, what kind of person participates in that? What happened to them that they participate in that? I know that, when I started finding out more, there was the little boy that I told you that in 2nd grade, and I knew his mom, because I was like, why is he a bully? I know he's got these amazing parents, and why is he bullying? And then, I found out that the teacher was bullying him, but I also found out more that he was a child who was adopted. I don't tend to notice these things, but he was a child that was adopted by a white family, and he's not a white kid. And that the kids and the teacher were picking on him because of that. And that's why he became a bully. Now that's crap, right? But what we know is that the bullies are people who were bullied. Now what we learned from that is make sure our kids are bully proof, because sometimes, very rarely, our kids will turn around and bully somebody else. Because that is what happens when you're bullied, not because of anything else. But we want to make our kids bully proof so that this does not happen to them in any way, shape, or form. But realize that those bullies, as nasty and ruthless and terrible they are, what in the heck happened to them? I love Sarah Silverman. Somebody said something really horrible to her, I think on Twitter once, and she responded and said, my goodness, what horrible thing must have happened to you that this is how you talk to somebody else? Took all the sting out of it because I think the person backed up and realized. But first line of defense, we're going to take care of our kids. Report bullying. Report it, especially at school. Don't let them, just be like, oh, it's a nothing burger. Don't let that happen. But teach these things to your kiddo. They'll be stronger. They'll be more protected. And things will go easier for them, but especially teach them how to react to the bullies. Not my favorite thing, but it works. All right. I love you all so much. We're back tomorrow with an Ask Dr. Doreen. We do have her, but she's going to be long distance. So write in your questions. I don't remember what the topic is because I'm, old. I think old is the word that I want. And I used to be able to remember that stuff. I need to take notes now, and I can't remember to do that because I'm old. But then we're back on Wednesday, and we are pre-taping some of our April shows. Ooh, it's good stuff, you guys. Don't forget, we're having our moving auction. It's happening right now. The auction goes till Thursday night. Pickup for the stuff is on Sunday. There's some good stuff, you guys. And right now it's really, really cheap. So bid on Max Sold. Have a great day too for you. This topic was a good one. Shared it out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you here. And we do like it when you like, share, subscribe, whatever the thing is. We are moving. We're not going away. We're pre-taping a lot of our shows for April that will happen during the move. But they're good. They're really good, you guys. So I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.